Fair dues warning. This is an adult podcast made for adults, and we cover historical events that some might blush and feel uncomfortable over. If you are not an adult or an adult who prefers not to listen to some topics that are a bit more on the naughty side, I suggest you clicking off now. For the rest of you, hello, welcome. Are you ready to pay for it? I know I am. Before we get to that though, if you are into spicy history takes, please consider subscribing on whatever streaming platform you are choosing to listen on. It helps me out a lot here on Paying for It. Now, it's time to get to the red light district. I'm ready if you are. Hello, my name is Summer, and this is Paying for It.
I got something between my legs, gonna make a dead man come. Oh, that. I got something between my legs, gonna make a dead man come. Oh, that. I'm gonna turn back my mattress and let you all my springs. I want you to blind me, daddy, till the bell do ring. Oh, that. Want you to shade and dry.
Thank you for being here for episode 39. It has been a minute. I know. What else is new in my life? Honestly, that is so normal for me. I have been busy with work, and honestly, I have sat down to record this episode at least 3 times. I've had technical difficulties that ran too long, so then I ended up not being able to get through the recording in time before I had to go do something else. The first one I did, I recorded and my mic wasn't working, so that didn't go well. It has just been a mess, honestly, but welcome to my life. It just happens to be what it is. Okay, but besides technical difficulties, I have been living my best life by playing Baldur's Gate. Am I good at it? Not really. I've gotten a lot better, but the first few tries at playthroughs, not great for us. We struggled, but we learned a lot, and this is we've gotten much further in this playthrough than we have at all. So it's very exciting, and yeah. We are just, honestly, I've just been living in a fantasy world because not only have I been playing Baldur's Gate 3, I've also been reading the Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, which is my first, real fantasy series that I've ever really gone into, and it's honestly changed my life. And it's hurting my feelings. It's hurting my motherfucking feelings, okay? I wish I could explain it in more. If you've read the book, you understand, but it is hurting my feelings. Anyways, I'm on book technically 4, but 3, no, 4, no. My God, I don't even know. So I've read the prequel, but I read the prequel as book 3, where she recommends that being read. So I've read Throne of Glass, the first book. Then I've read Queen of Shadows, the second book. Then I went back and read book 0, which was the Assassin's Blade. I think so. I think that's what it was called. And then I read book, so that would be 3, but it's actually technically 0. So then I read actual book 3, which was my favorite so far in the series, but I can't think of the name. And I read Hair of Fire. And yeah, that one so far has been my favorite in the series. Let me just talk to you about Rowan real fast. Let me just talk to you about my girl Selena or Aylin. really just, but I'm not going to go on. This is not going to be a full intro about why did I want to call it Game of Thrones? Never seen that in my life. Throne of Glass. But I will say, if you're into those types of books and you haven't checked them out, you should check them out. She's a very good writer. The story is very good. It pisses you off. And it pissed me off. And it hurts my feelings. And now I'm going on to Queen of Shadows. And I've been really stalling, to be honest. I've been stalling because I know this one is not going to feel great. And honestly, none of them have. But I know this one is also not going to feel awesome. The way Hair of Fire ended just destroyed a lot. Just hurt in general. So, yeah, that's where I've been at. Just living in a fantasy world from Baldur's Gate to Throne of Glass. I've just been there doing that. And I've been enjoying it. Yeah. But I am sorry it has taken me so long to get back into the seat and sit down with you guys and come to you and talk to you. I have been a busy little gal, even though I just made it seem like I haven't been. I do work a lot. And so I, have to pick and choose. But I think I'm getting to a more set schedule. So I will, and, fingers crossed, knock on some wood, and believe me with a grain of salt, I guess. Hopefully be getting on a better recording schedule. But what I can tell you today is that I have the next 2 episodes already written because I haven't been not researching and not writing, more just haven't had the time to sit down and make this episode for you. So that is what we're trying to do today, clearly. And, wish us luck that you actually see me and this episode gets published and we aren't having technical difficulties that I'm unaware of or all that fun bullshit. Okay. One day, this will go easy. Maybe it won't. Maybe I'm gaslighting myself into thinking that one day I will figure my life out when it comes to recording and the technology. Because it's so simple, but sometimes can be so frustrating and so overwhelming. Anywho, I also am going to still be working on a background. We aren't going to have this plain back wall with some books peeking out. I promise I have plans to make this look cool. But for now, we have a red light gas light, and we like it. We love it. We are here for it. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, shall we get into it? Shall we get back to Storyville? What you guys are really here for? Those freaking beautiful stories of the queens that established that women are business oriented too. And yeah, I hope you've been enjoying Storyville. I hope you've been enjoying what the story has unfolded and where we're going. So yeah, don't know where I was going with that, honestly. But yeah, shall we get into it? I think we shall. Let's do it. Welcome back. Gossip on the Town says you had a great night at Lulu White's and enjoying all that Montgomery Hall had to offer. The smile on your face tells me that the gossip this time might just be accurate. Glad to see you had a good time. Are you ready to go again? I figured as much. I heard another queen caught your eye at the ball of 2 well-known gentlemen. Great. Let's walk and talk then. She's expecting you. You are in for a real treat today. This queen has built herself up starting at the bottom as a rough and rowdy girl. She's been through a lot, but none of that has ever stopped her. She wouldn't allow for it. She's a feisty one, so you'll love her. But she has elevated herself in this business and in this game. So she is not as wild as she once was in her younger days. Don't get me wrong, though. She has a lot of fight left in her, and the wild hasn't left her quite behind. Though she is elegant and loves the finer things now in life, however, she will not tolerate any sort of disrespect or anything that would disturb her atmosphere that she has worked so hard to establish in her place. Her reputation and her bordello has proceeded to be just the place to get your rocks off. Here she has created an aurora that allows you to come to her place for more than just what's for sale. She has created a tone that makes you want to come to her place and hang out, chill, relax, and de-stress. She has a lot of friends in high places and has the power to get you into those circles. She knows the right people, and if she doesn't, she knows how to get in touch with someone who does. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let's head over, and she will tell you all about it. So with that, you know what time it is. Grab yourself a cocktail, a mocktail, a coffee, whatever you are fancying today. But today I have my favorite new little drink to be drinking is a little bit of a version or a mocktail, if you will, margarita. This one today, so what I do is I just rim a glass with salt as if we are throwing back tequila, okay? And I take the frozen concentrate limeades and mix it up according to the package. And then I get some flavoring. Today I have passion fruit. And I put that passion fruit into the glass, fill it with ice, top it with limeade, and the girl's got a little, I feel like I'm at the beach drinking tequila. You know, that's why it's salty when we kiss, okay? So I hope whatever you have, you are enjoying it and you're getting ready to sit back and relax and learn about a feisty little woman. Let's do it, shall we? All right, I think we shall. Cheers, 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 cheers. And let me introduce you to Josie Arlington. Anyone who is anyone in Storyville knows who Josie Arlington is. She has definitely made a name for herself throughout her time in the district. She is at the top of her game. How could she not be when she is best friends with Tom Anderson? Some even say that she may have had an affair with him, but that's gossip and never really proven. And so what if she did? You get it, girl. So anyways, let's go talk to the queen herself. Stepping into the foyer, you are stunned by the mansion's beauty. But it wasn't just the beauty of the mansion. It was the feeling the mansion elicited in you. Then the queen enters the room. However, before you can get to her and her girls, we have to go back to how it all began for her. Though Josie doesn't often talk publicly about her life pre-Storyville, however, you're in luck today. She's ready to tell it all. Born Mary Ann Dubler on February 8th, 1864 in New Orleans. She was born to German immigrant parents. She was also the middle child and had an older and younger brother named Henry and Peter. They were raised by very strict parents who had extremely strict rules. Mostly, though, the strict rules applied to the daughter, of course, Mary. Now, what led Mary to turn to the life of what some call sin and others see as freedom and a life to power? If, of course, done right. Her story has been twisted and had many different stories that led to the same outcome. Her becoming Josie Arlington. There are a few tales that surround the queen herself, and I believe that the truth lies somewhere in all of them. So let's get into them. What is told by most, including her family, goes like this. Mary was 17 years old. a young teenage girl who met a boy who she was going out with and seeming to be seen. And one night, Josie was late getting home from a date with Philip, her boyfriend, and she missed curfew. When trying to get back into her home, her dad shut the door in her face. No matter how much she knocked to get let back in, he ignored her, leaving her out on the doorsteps. Her father thought that there was only one reason she could have missed curfew, and that she no longer was pure. So she no longer belonged or was allowed to be a part of their family. This is the version that is also written in the book Queen New Orleans by Harnett T. Kane, which was written in 1949. He says, a certain Lebrano took her to dinner and did not bring her home until nearly 11 o'clock. This, of course, could mean only one thing. Her father slammed the door, and though Josie knocked and knocked, he kept it barred against her. Meanwhile, Lebrano was writing outside. He was afraid he couldn't support her, but he had another suggestion. She would support him. He knew one or two madams. With his backing, she could do well for herself. All right, let's think about that. You are 17 and you miss curfew, and most of us think, fuck, my parents are going to be pissed at me. I'm going to get grounded and it's going to suck. But I very, very highly doubt, or I seriously hope, that most of our family isn't going to kick us out when we miss curfew, or just, completely disown us. So that really gives you a look into what it was like living in a time when a girl's worth and status really came down to her purity and her virginity. Her family didn't have any facts that this was no longer a virgin. And it was just the idea, the very possibility that it could be true that caused them to kick her out and disown her. So at 17, Mary finds herself alone with nowhere really to go, which in turn has her running to her boyfriend, who also had no real way to take care of her or them. However, it is thought that Philip Lebrano came up with an idea on how Mary could instead take care of them both. Now, later in life, though, Josie will tell her niece, at least this is according to her niece, which you will have to decide at the end of this how much you want to believe of her. Anywho, that will come later. Anyways, the niece will go on to say that her aunt Josie told her that she was orphaned at a young age, where she was then forced to live with her mother's sister, who was extremely cruel to her and treated her very poorly, forcing her to leave the house and to start selling her wares at the age of 10. We do know that Josie did go shortly by the name Schultz, which is said in a court case, which again we'll get into later. But she is stated in the said court case that she briefly does go by the name Mary Schultz. Reported in the Times-Picayune in January 29th, 1892, my right name is Marianne Dubler, was raised by my aunt named Schultz, and was once known by that name. Okay, so which was it? Was it the missing of curfew, her parents kicking her out, and then her boyfriend bringing her into the darker side of the world? Or was it that she was orphaned and she was raised by an aunt who was cruel, forcing her to leave the house? It's hard to say. Most likely it will forever be a mystery to history. But if you are asking me, and what I believe to be true is that I believe there is truth in both stories. I believe that Mary got kicked out, and I believe it was after missing curfew with her boyfriend, not knowing what she should do, she turned to her aunt for a place to stay, only for her to be going from a strict house to a cruel one, and then having her run even more into her boyfriend's, Philip Lebrano's, arms. She was not, though. We know for a fact, historians can prove that Mary was not 10 years old when she got into the industry. So when she runs more into her boyfriend's arm, he then is going to introduce her to the underbelly of New Orleans, and a way to not only support her, but them at the same time. And this is exactly what she does. Like all queens we talk about here on Paying for It, Josie was strong-willed with an entrepreneurial nature to her. So it wasn't long before Josie was ready to give herself a promotion. So sometime in 1885, Miss Josie Lebrano will be listed as head of house in the brothel on 172 Custom House Street in Bogan. Now, if you're thinking of Josie as we know her now, you would be very wrong, because our elegant queen didn't start off all that elegant or nice. In fact, Josie's first brothel was situated in the seedier side of town. Her brothel, Chateau, was known for being a rough and tumble sort of place. It was real close to the city's prison and was surrounded by the Chinese laundromats that were secretly mostly all opium dens. Opium dens were a very known problem for those living in the city. In fact, the mascot would often report on the issue. The August 3rd, 1889 edition wrote, "It would surprise many persons if they only knew to what a frightful extent the opium has taken hold in New Orleans. It may not be generally known, but a matter of fact, more people in New Orleans are addicted to the enslaving and totally demoralizing habit than in any other city of the Union. The opium joints flourish in all parts of the city and are patronized by all classes. Their locations are known not only by regular fiends, but also to many other peoples besides the police who are not regular customers. Almost every Chinese laundromat in New Orleans is an opium joint, where the lovers of the pipe can be accommodated." So Josie was surrounded by those who lived their life in the wilder side. However, Josie was right there with them. She too was wild and very feisty. In fact, it was a well-known secret that the Chateau, Josie's brothel, was one of the most rowdy of them all, regarded as one of the roughest brothels in town, and often the gruffest of clientele coming through. It was known to have fights breaking out nightly, whether it was between Patreons or the girls or girls in the Patreons or Josie herself. At this point in her life, Josie had a nasty reputation for being a fighter. She wasn't afraid to throw down like the rest of them. She, of course, was living this very wild life that kept her on her toes, but she didn't back down for nothing. During this time, Josie was known to wear the popular hairstyle of this era, known as the pompadour. She learned that with this hairdo, she could be fashionable and sneaky. It was said that Josie would keep her diamonds hidden within her hair. And a local newspaper of the time reported that one night, Josie engaged in a fight with another working girl, Beulah Ripley. This fight left them both bloody and bruised. According to the report, after the fight was broken up, Beulah left missing part of her ear and lip, okay? And Josie missing a large portion of her hair. One can only wonder Ibula was able to find those hidden diamonds. Because it was sure seeming like that's what she was going for. At this time in New Orleans, it was pretty well known secret on how corrupt the city officials were. Most of the city leaders didn't care much about keeping the citizens pure or safe from the sin of their city. No, they were more concerned about filling their own pockets. In 1893, a court case was filed against two officers, Patrick J. Bell and John P. Bahai. Turns out these two fucking jackasses were blackmailing the sex workers, charging each lady $2 for their protection. And yeah, $2 today is like what? But $2 then was a lot of money. This scandal shook up the police force, and as more stories came out regarding other officers of the law doing things very similar, the ladies of the evening feeling vindicated and a bit shocked that the crimes against them were actually being acknowledged. And this whole situation actually ends up going to trial in court, and the girlies come out for each other. This ends up rallying the troops, and they sure did turn up in full force in front of the courthouse to stand by during this trial. On September 1st, 1893, a report tells us what it was like to be a working lady showing up for each other. There were women dressed in all the colors of the rainbow. They were dressed in rustling silks and satins. They were dressed in rags. Costly diamonds flashed, and dirt showed itself plainly on countress and figure. Josie herself was out there celebrating and standing as one with all of the other ladies, no matter what side of the spectrum you landed on within this career. Another article with the subhead title reading, "They Drink Champagne," read, "Women old and women young, women white and women black, painted or haggard, successful or starving, they made up the most representative groups of beings belonging to the world's necessary social evil. The queens of the Demimonde, Annie Decker, Josie Librano, Arlington, and press mayors made the occasion of their first appearance in the council chamber a festive one. They acted in the public hall as if they were at home. Feeling dry, they called out of their coachman and sent him off for some bottles of champagne. They sat in the front rows of the chairs behind the spectators' rail. Honestly, girls after my own heart. Imagine you are in a courtroom and you're listening to proceedings that are pretty serious and being like, you know what? I'm feeling a little parched and maybe kind of bored. Let's spice this up. I need to pop some bottles. And that's exactly what they did. The courageous woman, though, did face down the power that was supposed to protect them, but instead had abused them. Throughout this trial, it exposed this very deep corruption that was slowly seeping into the police and politics. The original officers pointed at during this trial, Bell and Bahi, were immediately released from the force. However, men in much higher positions were implicated during the case from chief down, honestly. This case was one that led to the beginning blocks of turning the career of a working girl into a legal one, and the beginning blocks of Storyville. During this time, rough and rowdy was the norm, and it was often very violent altercations were common. So one night after Thanksgiving, Philip Librano, Josie's boyfriend, will storm into the house he is sharing with Josie while she was asleep in their bed. He will wake her to tell her that he absolutely did not want her brother Peter DeBlar let into the house. According to him, he and Peter had gotten into a drunk fight earlier in the evening, at Louis George's Saloon on Royal Street. However, Peter did arrive at the house that night, and another vulgar altercation ensued. Just 15 minutes later at 11:30, tragedy strikes. A story published on January 29, 1892 reported, Lebrano took a pistol from the mantelpiece, and although witnesses attempted to prevent him by getting between the two men, he shot Dubler. The night after Thanksgiving, Philip Lebrano, Jose's boyfriend of 9 years, is going to shoot her brother in the head. Jose will later go on to state that never did her brother attempt to raise his fist, nor went for him physically in any way. Peter was shot with a fatal wound to the head, although it did not kill him instantly. In fact, he lived for several days after being shot in the head. It blows my mind to think that, and it's very sad to hear, because back then, like, what kind of pain medicine did they have? That could not have been a good time. A good way to go. I mean, getting shot in general is not a good time. I don't know why I said that, but like, it could not have been like a good way to go. Peter will not pass until 2 weeks later after being shot, which is wow. Now, that clearly would throw a wrench into a relationship with her and Philip. And while digging into the fight, it seems it was over nothing. They were just drunk and talking shit. Leading up to the trial that happened 14 months after the shooting, Jose and Philip have, of course, separated, and it seemed that Jose was doing her best to move on. However, during the trial, not much evidence was able to be presented, as it became a very he said, she said thing, as the only witness to the murder was his sister. However, it's not like Peter was denying the fact that he shot him. He just said he was doing it out of self-defense. It seems that Jose would be scorned yet again by the courts for her being a woman, a lady of the evening, and because everything else that kept the power away from her in these moments. The courts will eventually go on to acquit Philip. And he will fade into history because who cares about him, as he got away with murder. This will begin a new chapter of Jose's life, as she not only has to close a 9-year chapter of her life, but come to terms with the fact that her boyfriend also killed her brother. Okay, her ex that she had lots of history with shot her boyfriend. So now she has to move on and adjust life from there. So she takes a vacation to get away and rest. Now, by the time her brother's trial took place, Josie had moved on to a new man, and she would often talk to press about the fact. So when the trial was over, her new man, John Thomas Brady, John, a sporting man, loved to live life lavishly. So did Arlington. So they will take off to Hot Springs, Arkansas, to stay at the hottest hotel of the time, the Arlington Resort Hotel and Spa, a hotel that still proudly stands today. In this era, the resort was 3 stories high with landmark twin towers, 120 guest rooms, making it one of the largest hotels at the time in the States. In between the 2 towers was this really peaceful, elegant courtyard, this beautifully elaborate, and the beautifully elaborate rooms were illuminated by gaslight, a luxury for the time. When her time of relaxation and recharge came to an end, Josie and her new man returned to New Orleans, inspired by the elegance and upper-class vibes of the Arlington Hotel and Resort and Spa. She decides it's time to make big changes with her bordello. Getting back into town, she announces that she will be changing the name of her brothel to Chateau d'Arlington. In the next 6 years to come, Arlington will go to work really hard to totally change her image and the image of her business. Gone would be the wild girl who wasn't afraid to defend the diamonds in her hair, matching the brute brass and crass ways of the men coming through her rough and tumbler part of town. She immediately starts by making and enforcing a no cursing in her establishment rule, which of course is going to automatically start changing the people coming through her doors. She would also go in on changing the vibe of the men coming through her doors. However, slowly she will start redefining her persona and the girls that she goes on to hire and allow to work within her house. She had an image and she was going to make that image come true. Her goal is to start seeking to appeal to the more sophisticated and elegant clientele. She will start by recruiting women that would look and sound more exotic. It didn't matter if the women were coming to work for her were actually exotic, because that never matters. As long as you could create the fantasy for the men walking through the doors, that was all that mattered. Often, Josie was claiming that she was getting women from all around the world, but in fact, she was really recruiting women that worked within the many circuses that were coming into town. And like I said, it honestly did not matter that some people knew the women she got weren't actually from all around the world. That didn't stop the men coming into her chateau and paying for the fantasy that she was providing. And she was very good at it because she will become very successful and she will gain a newfound respect within this community. Arlington will also go on to start making friends in high places, mingling and making political moves to catapult her into a higher social standing, opening doors for herself that wouldn't have come without her rebrand, pretty much. One of the most important of these friends would be none other than, of course, the mayor of Storyville, Tom Anderson. He will go on to play a key role into her buying and opening her infamous house, the Arlington. So after 6 years of putting in work to rebrand and fix her image, her connections with Tom Anderson will come into play. He will fill her in on the information that he was getting from his political connections of the up-and-coming opening of the district. With this information that was shared with her, Arlington will go on and get a brothel in the legal part of this district that soon was to open, making her business as legitimate as possible for the time. And now she was a legitimate business owner. In 1891, Arlington moved into what was going to be the heart of the district, into her temporary building at 227 Basin Street. All while her mansion, her vision, her future was being built next door at 225 Basin Street. Josie had a vision for her new saloon, and it was going to be an elegant, beautiful, and rich place. A saloon fit only for a lady of her hard-fought status. Walking in, you can't help but notice the marble wood and these gorgeous, elaborate mirrors throughout the house. Josie also commissioned these spectacular oil paintings. Her lounges had a very elite atmosphere to them and very secluded and private. This is a very rich, private, and sensual atmosphere that she was providing and allowing the Colonel Sin to become secondary to the private and seclusive lounges that she was creating within her house. This was a place where high-powered white men, of course, could come and relax, enjoy the finer things in life. Josie took extreme pride and joy in her house that it became a showpiece within the community. Because of her ties and vibes she created in her home, her brothel became the place that politicians and bigwigs felt comfortable socializing and discussing business within her mansion during the green hours. Absinthe during the mid-19th period became very popular due to the Great French Wine Blight. This was caused when an abbot brought from America to France, probably for experimenting with vine grafting. However, it ended up destroying the French vineyards as well as some vineyards in Europe. Wine became very hard to get and very expensive. This allowed an open door for the green elixir to sneak into its place. Absinthe flowed freely through Storyville, and for a while it was the drink of choice. It was what everyone went to, and so it was something that was commonly served within brothels, but not all brothels, the higher establishments, places like the Arlington. At this point, Josie was that bitch in Storyville, and with her connections to Tom Anderson, who historians say that they may have at one point had a relationship beyond business. However, that's all hearsay. Even though he named his freaking restaurant after her, does not mean that they were fucking. Could mean that they were fucking, but we don't know for sure. But with her connections to Tom, she often was advertised in the blue books, often picturing her elegant lounges and even her a few additions picturing her private quarters. So she was someone who was often advertised, full spreads within the blue books. But that could be because what some people think that they had a relationship, but it also could be that she had a very beautiful house, a very elegant building, and she took pride into what it looked like and what went into it. So, like I said earlier, it really did become a showpiece of Storyville. Even if you weren't going to her place to have a little fun and buy the wares that were being offered, you could go because of the lounges she was creating, because of the beauty of her house and the beauty of the women that were just around. Being the it queen of Storyville really kept catapulting Josie into higher and higher social statuses, which also pushed her up the financial ladder. Josie really was living her best life and was at the top of her game. She will continue to dominate Storyville upper class for years to come. Josie often would attend the ball of two well-known gentlemen. Now, mind you, this ball is for those who enjoyed the sporting life, the carnal part of life, the sinful side of life. It was truly for the women that society turned their noses up to. The ladies of the evening weren't allowed to attend any of the polite society balls, mostly due to the women demanding them bar from joining in. So the ball of two well-known gentlemen became the ball for the sporting life of men and mostly for the women. It became almost exclusive in its own right, but that made the women of quote-unquote polite society all the more curious about the ball, even though they, as a woman of polite society, couldn't really be seen at this kind of ball. It would give them a bad reputation. They wanted to see it. However, often these balls were masquerades. So a lot of the time, your identity could and would be hidden. So often this was a way for the proper ladies to get their peek into the life and the life of the women who took the path less traveled, all while wearing a mask so no one would be the wiser. The ball of 1906, though, Josie would get word that the proper ladies planned to dress up and crash their good time. Josie, though, she got winds of this plan and she was having literally none of it. So later that evening, as the ball was getting into full swing of things, Josie initiated her plan and a police raid ensued. The raid was planned, so what came of it really is kind of a mystery to history and probably not much because it was kind of a joke. However, the mortification of all the quote-unquote proper ladies who got caught within the ball definitely had Josie and all of the working girls, I'm sure, laughing for days. On December 1st, 1905, a fire started at the Arlington, though the true reason behind the fire is, again, a mystery to history. However, there are two strong theories. One of those theories was that it was an electrical fire. The second theory, which is mostly believed, was that it could have possibly been due to the painters who Josie had hired to repaint her mansion. At this time in history, things were new. So if you wanted to repaint your house to remove the old color, the painters would use the technique of scorching the paint off. Now, no matter the cause, a fire did break out and caused a lot of damage. The roof at the Arlington was completely lost, and the top two floors were badly damaged. However, the bottom floor was mostly made of stone, and it was spared. Luckily, everyone survived the fire. The ladies did escape to the Arlington Annex, Tom's place right next door. He will allow a lot of her ladies to work and live within the annex while Arlington did repairs. Josie will go on to have the Arlington fixed after what was a bit of an insurance battle. A lot of people, the news deemed her as like trying to scam the insurance company. Really, it was just because she was a woman of wealth already, and they didn't want to see her succeed. It was a very dumb insurance battle because it seemed as if they were just mad that she was going to be able to reopen. So for a minute, news articles and everyone talked highly suspicious of her, but really it was just because, again, very successful women get demonized within the community no matter what. And for this time period, it was even worse because especially for what she made her living. Anyways, she eventually does get the payout for her insurance claim, and she goes on to fix her building. For some time, Josie and her longtime lover, Tom Brady, who she lived with as husband and wife, even though they were not married, had been starting to separate their life from the business. In fact, it had been a while since her and Tom had really been staying in the private quarters in the mansion. They really were attempting to separate themselves from that nightlife, I'm assuming. And a lot of that has to do with Josie's niece named Anna. And this was the daughter of the surviving brother, Henry. He also had two other boys. However, even though Josie really loved her nephews, she cared very deeply for her niece, especially because Anna was a female. And I think she just truly wanted to shelter her niece and spoil her niece and give her niece the life that she probably wanted as a child. But she definitely kept her niece, for sure, away from the business side of her life. She didn't want Anna to be aware or near that business or her business. So Anna had no idea why her aunt was so wealthy. And at this point, my girl, she was wealthy, okay? So, yeah, Josie and Tom have been living outside the mansion for some time. And when outside of Storyville, she would go by the name of Mrs. Brady. Eventually, in 1906, she will buy another mansion outside of the district in a very upper class neighborhood. Her and Tom and Anna will live there for years to come. Why Anna was living with them, I'm not quite sure. I don't fully, it's the 1800s of it all. Well, I guess at this point, the 1900s of it all. So the backstory on why Anna is living with her aunt and her aunt's, for all intents and purposes, husband is kind of unclear, but she was. And man, oh man, Josie throughout the years had done extremely, extremely well for herself, and she was able to afford to live it up now, as she would often take vacations with Tom and Anna and her family. She would spoil the shit out of her family, and she had multiple vacation homes and properties. She would lavish Anna in the finest clothing and jewelry. She spoiled her people. She really did. She would make sure to take care of her family as well as providing jobs for her nephews as they got older, working for her up until her death and after, to be honest. She also was a very kind soul. She was often donating to churches and other causes, even though at this time she was still very much looked down upon and seen as someone who 100% was going to hell because of her job. In 1909, when Josie is around 44 years old, Tom Anderson and Tom Brady will start to advise Josie to retire, as Tom Anderson had some insight and information on the rough weather that the district was looking to face in the near future, as politically things were starting to ramp up. So Josie will then turn her keys and the business of the Arlington over to her very long-time manager, Anna Cassie, who will continue to run the Arlington until the district shuts down. Josie at this point will know that her life and her story was one to be memorialized, as she must have known she made a mark on history, and it was her job to make sure that mark that she had worked hard on making stuck even after death. So in 1911, Josie will commission and buy a tomb for herself, and it was a really beautiful brass statue of a woman knocking on the door of the tomb. The woman held a bouquet of roses in the other arm that was not knocking. Although the true meaning behind this statue she chose for her burial is, again, a mystery to history, but some believe that this was to represent the fact that she never let a virgin in her home. Josie prided herself on never having a virgin deflowered within her mansion. And something we haven't touched on in the district is that was an extremely, extremely high market, and it was also very much sought after, and there was a lot of money in it. But Josie would not do that. She did not feel that that was the right way to get money, so she never had a young woman come in to her house if she hadn't already been a part of this world. Others, including her family, believe that it was to represent herself as the young girl knocking on her family's door and being turned away the night she missed curfew, turning her to this life that at times she just endured and at other times thrived, but ultimately enjoyed and loved. In 1913, sadly, Josie Arlington will fall ill with dementia. It is in this illness and sickness that her niece will finally learn the truth behind what led and allowed her to live this elaborate lifestyle. Though Josie took care of her niece and allowed for her to live a life she would not have been able to afford without her, Anna will not return the favor to her aunt, Josie, as she does take care of her through her final days. But after Josie passes a year later on February 14th, 1914, Anna's greed and selfishness will start to really surface. During the final days of Josie Arlington's life, Anna will start plotting and scheming ways to be able to keep her aunt's money flowing her way. 2 months prior to Josie passing away, Henry, her brother, Josie's brother, Anna's father, will get a phone call from Mr. Brady, which is Josie's husband pretty much, asking him to come by to the mansion. When arriving, he was greeted by his daughter, announcing that she was going to marry Mr. Brady, Tom Brady, her uncle. Further stating, "We have everything our way fixed." Henry will later testify that he was pretty disturbed by the idea of her marrying Tom, his sister's longtime lover, and all her life uncle. Anna would often come down the stairs throughout the end of Josie's life and announce, "Me and Uncle Tom are going to be married, whether you like it or not." He, of course, was not happy about the idea of his daughter marrying his sister's, for all intents and purposes, husband, just for the purpose of gaining her money and really just keeping her hands on his sister's estate and not losing the lifestyle that she was so accustomed to because her aunt built it for her. I think of this and I can't imagine, and I'm so sad and feel so sad for Josie in these final days. And I honestly hope that by this point she was suffering from dementia, so I really do hope that she was unaware of what was happening and what was going on with her niece, because to think that she knew what her niece was doing to her just to be greedy and selfish really hurts my heart. Because what did she think, that her aunt wasn't going to take care of her in the end? I don't believe that either. I think her aunt was fully going to set her and her husband up in the end, but they weren't going to get it all. And that lies the problem. So, yeah, although I was not there during this time, nor was I a fly on the wall for the reason behind Anna's betrayal, and that's how I see it, a betrayal to her aunt. However, I can't see it any other way than being such a selfish little bitch, okay? It seems like a selfish move. On February 19th, 1914, 5 days after Josie's death, a search was ordered for Josie's will. And at this point, they find the will, and a lot of it is being left to Brady. Anna and Brady will go on and get married on February 21st, 1914, 1 week after Josie's death. Anna and Brady will then go to the attorney and sign papers stating that the house that Josie had bought was to be put in Brady's name. So basically, she is marrying Brady to take control of everything so that Brady doesn't, Brady doesn't get everything. Even though Brady lived with her as her uncle for years. Because mind you, this was the man that Josie got with after her relationship ended with Philip. So it's hard to imagine that There's not something icky going on with both of that. It like freaks me out. It's gross to me. Although Henry really did fight against his daughter and her uncles, husband, whatever, in an attempt to fight for his sister and what he felt she would ultimately want. However, legally, unfortunately, there wasn't much he could do because Anna had been steps ahead of him. And so she got everything. She and Brady pretty much got everything. And Anna and Brady will live in the mansion for years to come off the money of Josie. But her niece's betrayal, of course, does not end there, as she will be proved to be even more of a selfish little girl. Because as it turns out, when you don't work ever in your life, you feel entitled to a life you did not earn. So when they blew through the remaining money, they didn't go to work. She will instead turn to the last thing she could yank away from her aunts. On February 15th, 1915, a year after death, Brady and Anna will have Josie Arlington moved from her beautiful tomb that she commissioned and is moved to an unknown location so they could sell her tomb and continue to profit off of her aunts. I mean, if you think of a villain in someone's story, I can't think of a better person than this bitch Anna. Someone who got everything she ever wanted because of her aunts, who was sheltered, loved, and cherished in a time that in women's history was not something easily come by, okay? Josie took care of her, sheltered her, and loved her. The way she pays her aunts back in death is one of the most disrespectful and despicable things you can do to a person, especially then going on and yanking and selling her final resting place to a private owner that is still to this day owned privately by not the person who it should be owned by. Like, I cannot wrap my head around that. The pure evil and villainousness of it all. And don't even get me started on Tom Brady. I don't understand what the hell any of them were thinking or why he would be okay with this. But the only thing I could think of is that there was some grooming situation going on there behind Josie's back. There was something gross happening there because they continued to stay married for the rest of their remaining life, and they continued to live in that mansion forever together as husband and wife. And I am so grossed out by that. Ew. It truly breaks my heart to think that Josie was betrayed over and over by the ones that were supposed to love her. I mean, come on. Her dad, her family, her boyfriend shoots her brother, and then who she loved and cared for and made a living in life for ends up marrying her niece just to betray her even more by taking her out of her final resting place and selling it. It's honestly disgusting. It's so gross to me. I can't. So she a bitch, and we do not like her. And glad to know that she doesn't make her mark on history other than being a fucking, selfish bitch. Anyways, little rant over about Anna. That's how I feel, and I don't care. That, my friends, was the story of the good, the bad, the ugly, but also the glamour, the power, and the freedom of Josie Arlington. Even though she continued through life to be betrayed by the ones she loved and turned away, she made the most of the game called life. Even though all of the cards were very much stacked against her when she was turned away from her family, she was able to overcome and rise past the stigma the world forced upon her. She was able to climb the social ladder and push herself into circles that the world said she didn't belong in. Josie made the mark on history, not only as a sex worker, but a true queen of business, and just in general, a true queen. And you know what? Cheers to her for that. Cheers to Josie. My drink has melted, and it looks very not pleasing, but cheers to her. And I hope her niece and Tom are rotting somewhere. Okay. Let's move on. I'm angry. I'm angry about it. Okay, I can't deny it. I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here for episode 39. And thank you for taking the time to come on this journey through Storyville with me and learn about the powerful ladies of our past. Though our journey is coming to an end, we still have so much to talk about when it comes to Storyville and the closure of one of the longest running red light districts of our history that remains, and what the closure meant for the ladies who made it their life, New Orleans who benefited from it, and the men who paid for it. I would also really like to know your opinions on what you think of Josie, her story, and the impact she had on Storyville and our history. Also, I would love to know your thoughts on that bitch Anna and Tom getting married after her death and keeping her money and just being selfish. I want to know your opinions. Maybe you see something I don't, but yeah, at the moment, I'm like, we don't fuck with that bitch. But until then, I hope you have an amazing rest of your week and stay cool out there, and I will see you when I see you. Goodbye. The fucking balloons. I don't understand.